All right, everyone, welcome to the Lifting the Iceberg podcast. I'm sitting here with Alexis Spaddy, Alex Gray, and Allyson Gray, and we are a week out from coming back from Burning Man and experiencing that all together. And I just wanted to sit down and talk about our experience. And I want to talk about what Burning Man is. Burning Man evades traditional definitions. You know, it's not quite a festival. It's not quite an art show. It's something like a temporary city, a countercultural outpost for experimentation and realization. A great quote by Eric Davis, who is a friend of Cosm. He calls Burning Man a promiscuous carnival of souls, a metaphysical flea market, a demolition derby of reality constructs colliding on a parched void. I thought that was a really interesting articulation.
It's very poetic.
And my first question directed to you two is, before we get into what Burning Man is, I just want to ask you, why and when did you first attend Burning Man, and what was that experience like?
We were invited by Richard Wolff, an incredible technologist and philanthropist, and from a family of media specialists in Columbus, Ohio. He was a good friend of ours who invited us and sponsored our first trip to Burning Man in 2003 when Xena was 14. So Xena came with us for the first time, and there is actually a YouTube video of us doing the public talk for Palenque Norte called Psychedelic Family Values. What do you tell the children?
That's appropriate.
Yes, so Xena was part of that, and she actually speaks for herself as a 14-year-old who has never tried psychedelics or any kind of substances. So it was a very interesting talk. Rick Doblin was there, and a lot of other big shots came to our talk, and you can see that on YouTube. But anyway, it was 2013, thanks to Richard Wolff.
2003.
2003, excuse me, yes, sorry. Thanks to Richard Wolff, and he's an amazing person. Still lives on, in the Haight-Ashbury district. He's right there, living right in the middle of San Francisco for his whole life.
Now, what did you know of Burning Man before you went? Like, what was the word on the street,
No, I don't even remember if I knew anything about it. Did we?
Oh yeah. No, Burning Man. There was a wonderful article on Burning Man, like a few years after it started happening in the desert, in High Performance Magazine, which was a magazine coming out of California, but it featured Larry Harvey's kind of evolution from the beaches of San Francisco, then out to the desert for more open embrace of a kind of a blank canvas. I think that every artist looks at a gypsum plane like that and sees the blank canvas of their imagination and possibilities, on any scale and unimaginable scales. Previously unimagined spectacles have emerged there. So it's really what a wonder
It's
field.
a perfect gallery for sculpture, okay, for monumental sculpture, and that's what it is. It's a monumental sculpture art fair, is my opinion. But they also have many, many other features. So you have the kinetic art cars, which are really sculptural, moving sculptures. And they're moving stages. So it absolutely supports new music at all times, and people are dancing at all times, and people are doing acrobatics and circus and all kinds of movement arts. There's, it's so large that there's room for all kinds of spectacle attractions, one of which we have been fortunate enough to become a part of in the last 4 years. We were at Burning Man several times before that, but in the last 4 years, we have been associated with the Foam Home, which is where the David Bronner, the incredible philanthropist, has started to offer the water experience of a lifetime. You never forget
performances.
What's good?
They call them private foam performances.
The private foam performances, but it's collaborative, and everyone comes in and has this experience and dances, and there's musicians, and there's art being painted, and it's just the most extraordinary daytime event. But then at nighttime, the place is just teeming, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was your experience, Alexa?
Oh, the foam experience was amazing. I mean, that was like something that I've never been part of. Just to kind of be a guardian for you two during the day, watching you paint Star Dancers, which has been this ongoing masterpiece collaboration, and just seeing so many naked people, that blew my mind. I loved it, actually, and kind of participating and being grateful that we had the foam there, because you can only imagine what the dust is so far until you're actually at Burning Man, and to have that cleansing for how many days was it? Like 3 days?
Only 4 days.
4
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
4 days.
Yeah.
4 days. We did it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and then Sunday they break it down.
Yeah, and that was just, I think, super special. Just to be in an environment where people were in a non-judgment zone, they could be really comfortable in their sexuality and be naked together, and it wasn't this sexualized thing at all. Like I would get in conversations with the stranger, and they're totally nude, and we're just looking at each other's eyes and scrubbing each other's backs to make sure we get the dust and off the back of your neck, and everyone's laughing and singing and dancing. It was really
I just want to say that I think it's
fascinating.
like a public service for the people, the thousands of people
Yeah.
that are
Yeah.
able to go through there, because they make such an emphasis on respect for
Consent,
each other and for no photographing,
Yep.
no staring.
Yep.
And they
No
make and
touching.
they no touching, no washing of anybody unless you get absolute yes consent, not an eye glance, and they go through all this on the
Yeah.
while you're listening to this incredible music
Yeah.
and having this wonderful time. They're reminding you of the principles of what it really means
From
to be consent. What is consent?
from Homo erectus to FOMO respectus.
Yes.
That's what he said. Yeah.
Good, that's such a good one.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
Burning Man is really good at providing containers for us to experiment and to do things differently, It's at Burning Man where you can dance naked in a dome filled with like dozens, if not over 100
Hundreds of
other
people,
people,
yeah.
and feel completely comfortable with that, We're often not given an arena to come to terms with our nakedness, with our nudity, That was something like I've never before that been nude around other people in a public space like that, Like that's
Your face.
Can I
was
tell you
great.
something?
Face was-
Yeah.
I have to say, I am the only one in this group that was not nude in that dome. And I have to say, I felt perfectly comfortable too.
Totally. Of
Okay?
course.
Yeah.
I did not judge myself because I am not going to do that. It wasn't so much me being nude, frankly. I've been nude in public
Yeah.
before, but it's just I don't feel comfortable doing that activity. But do I judge people for doing it? Not at all.
Right.
I really think that it's really fun for people, and I talked to a lot of people who felt the way I felt.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that anything about it was anything but absolutely beautiful, and I really respect everybody that did it. It made them feel wonderful and divine. It was interesting. Just to continue with that for 1 second. Tony Robbins, when we were about to walk on fire, because I walked on fire with Tony Robbins on numerous occasions, and before we were about to walk on fire, he said, "There are some people that will just do everything that everybody else will do, and it's good if you are like that. Don't do this activity." And I felt that way. I felt like I could just do it because everybody wants me to, but you know what? I'm not that comfortable with it,
Totally.
and I'm happy with my
You're busy
with my
painting.
clothes on
Yeah.
and taking my shower. And see, because Alex took a shower in there twice a day,
Yeah.
I got to use the shower in our trailer once a day, and I
Yeah.
just showered myself, and I just felt so happy. I don't want to say, for people to feel like you have to go to Burning Man and you have to be naked.
Yeah.
They have a naked parade.
That's not in the 10
Yeah.
principles. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
some people don't feel comfortable with it either.
Yeah.
But nobody has to judge each other. Everybody can embrace whatever it is,
I kind of looked at it as an obstacle that was valuable for me to try to overcome, being nude. And also just looking at from a psychological perspective, we're the only animals that wear clothes. We're the only animals
are.
when we take our clothes off, we feel embarrassed, like what is that? How come Adam and Eve became embarrassed and self-conscious of their nakedness? What is the wisdom behind that story? Why is that an aspect of being human, the desire to be clothed? And I was kind of contemplating that as I was dancing in foam that being sprayed at me out of a hose.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with the feeling of privacy,
Yeah.
and if it pleases you, it shouldn't harm or offend anyone else.
Right.
I was in the bathroom the other day though, and a baby deer with spots on it came out of the woods and was staring directly at me naked at the window.
Yeah.
There was a window between us, and he had never seen a naked person with no clothes on. I thought of exactly what you were saying. Nakedness and fire, I think, and control of fire are things that really separate us from the other creatures of the earth.
I will say though, fashion is such a cool creative art form, and you really do see that at Burning Man too. Is just the different headpieces that people are wearing.
Not just nudity, but the exact opposite.
Yeah, these elaborate costumes. I'm like, how are you comfortable in that? But damn, you look good.
Yeah. But
well, so at Burning Man, you've got this situation where there's public, or it's not really public because they are private foam performances for hundreds of people. But
Thousands of
okay,
people.
so but like at one point, so you see a swarm of flesh dancing happily to music without any interference or any friction. It enhances the altered state of having never seen or been amongst that cascade of flesh and being surrounded by your unknown friends who are equally ecstatically dancing to the beautiful music and feeling a sense of freedom that because of the relaxation of those restrictions and the special coincidence that you find yourself in having just been through a foam experience, now you're in an experience where there's a lot of dancing naked people. So
It's divine.
it's extraordinary.
It's absolutely divine.
It's heavenly. It's
It
like
is.
a rung of paradise on earth. And I mean, for me, of course, it was merely a matter of research. I had no particular interest in dancing amongst naked people sexually or anything like that. But you could see the painting at much better,
course.
kind of like way, and to see it amongst other dancing people was also an energetic kind of thing. I could see what they were seeing.
Yeah.
I could, in a sense, feel the from the various levels what was going on and what was our level of participation. And I felt like we sort of stood for the eternal dance of the cosmos of creativity, that each star dancer was a burst of energy of the cosmic universal creativity. Each one of us is what else are we, And so as that, and as representative of a frozen moment of an eternal of an eternal kind of appearance, the effervescence of the selves that move through that space over the day. They appear to the casual painter observer of the mass of flesh moving, and that's very distracting.
Yeah.
That is basically the same mass of flesh, but it's always changing.
Yeah.
you
And the whole thing, I think that whole kind of dome was designed to kind of curate this connection between people. And what we're talking about, the Star Dancers, for people who don't know, they can check that out on your Instagram. I think you recently posted. And on that painting, you have these rainbows connecting the heads.
Yes, you do.
What's your favorite color? Rainbow.
Rainbow. It was really fun.
And that
me
rainbow
getting together with
represents-
Avi, like to have something to say, and he kept doing it like over and over again, so it made it kind of that was
a
very
mantra.
fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, the whole thing was incredibly fun, and I love painting. And over the last 4 years, you see, we've seen an evolution in that particular attraction, but where they've really made it nice for us. They've made it nicer for everybody. They built all those places for people to put their clothes. It's become an incredible attraction. But anyway, we also saw those people down in Washington, D.C. at the mall. You can go and join them if you're in that area, the Washington Mall. It's a
Catharsis on the Mall.
Catharsis on the Mall. It's a 24-hour festival on the mall in Washington, D.C. Kind of MAPS. It's for MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, and they have a rally.
Visionary culture in general, I believe, and I think that David Bronner's been a stand by supporting all these various organizations,
including
and
COSM,
and has included COSM as well, and these are all really forward-thinking kinds of organizations. We're very honored to be associated with.
That was the cool thing about the camp that we were part of. It not only did they offer this foam experience, but then right next door they had the entheocentric tent where it was a full speaker series for I think those 4 days too, starting with Rick Doblin from MAPS, and you guys did
we did a talk about visionary art, and Amanda.
And it was a vast array of
Android Jones
of artists and clinical psychologists, and
Paul Stamets.
Paul Stamets was there, so it was both a fun cleansing experience, and then you went over and then you got a full download on what's happening in psychedelic culture and visionary art, and that's such a cool mesh. I think
it was a brilliant camp, you guys.
Brilliant
camp.
We got the good one.
We had, and I don't think that he'd minded if I mentioned that we had Danny Elfman, the great, music producer and composer, was in our pod. I mean, he's just a great musical guy.
Yeah.
And we had wonderful, wonderful stars, but we also had just wonderful people in our camp. It's a rather extraordinary camp.
Genuine.
But it's only one camp of many.
I know.
80,000 people, and we had about 350 in our camp, I would think.
I feel like I didn't even scratch the surface.
Oh, it's exactly it. And as you were saying that it's the perfect venue for sculptures, as you were saying, I wanted to mention that one that you often mention, which is social sculpture. Social sculpture is really, when you get down to it, the ultimate thing that Burning Man is about.
It is.
Because it's about finding a way for a community to come together, to rally together, to create something beautiful, extraordinary, and unforgettable, and to create a group mystical experience.
But let me say this, the person who coined the phrase social sculpture was Joseph Beuys, and the definition of social sculpture, though, includes the intention for the creator or creators, in this case, the many people who make it, to have transformation happen in society. So you're having a transformative social experience or
That's beautiful.
experiment.
Yeah.
And that's what I think that on the grandest scale Burning Man is, because it's not only it's fully not even a barter system. It is a gift economy.
Yeah.
That means that you shouldn't expect anything for what you give away, and you should just give it away. And you can go there and have a blueberry pancake breakfast or a seafood salad lunch.
Yeah.
Our daughter and her boyfriend used to stand in line for those things. You just
Yeah.
have to stand in line,
Yep.
and you get it. You know,
Yeah.
if you see it on the schedule, you can go eat there and go to all the different booths because they give stuff away. And frankly, not on our side of the playa so much, but there's huge open bar stuff going on
Yeah.
all over the place. You know, the alcohol consumption is
I don't know how they do
because they
that.
give it away.
So thirsty.
Yeah.
Like,
They give it away.
so hydrated.
Yeah.
Well,
Open bars, like you can give
But
it away.
yeah, cool.
I think
Mojito? Yeah.
gifting is a really amazing concept because, in a way, if everyone was giving equally, everyone would be provided for. You know, it's like if everyone kind of gave what they could, gave their all, then everyone would be receiving what they need, and everyone would be part of giving someone else what that person needed.
That
know?
sounds like the natural functioning social organism where people are not, where people trust that the same motive is in the hearts of the participant. And so one of the things that Burning Man does that we also feel inherently as part of our value system too is empowering each person as an artist and as a creative person. You know, that ultimately you're responsible for your creative actions in the world. And so it empowers the creative person. And yes, we all need to then work together as individual creative people. And when we can agree on what we do together, we can create something beautiful together. And that is what is seen time and time again.
Well,
at
it
Burning
sounds
Man.
like socialism to me. It's a social sculpture comes right out of socialism, which would be to each according to their need, from each according to their ability. So you give your ability. And we all do this when we go to Burning Man. Everybody, you know, I mean, we all know people who are super professional in the world and all that, and they get in there and they're building and they're carrying stuff, you know, and they're doing some very physical work. So, we all come to it with whatever our ability is and offer that.
Well,
it's a great
each little
experience.
pod and then each camp is a different kind of socio-political organization of themselves and an organization of individual
cities and
artists
states
as
in
well.
the country.
And
Well, we
each
called
has an imaginal self as well, you know, and it might be a wholly preposterous kind of imaginal thing that they're all like taking on for the time, you know. It's your freedom to imagine. And, you know, I think that that's the great thing, you know, that Burning Man has and all festival culture has is the greatest nation on earth. They share the greatest nation, the imagination.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and I wanna talk more about like kind of what Burning Man is. So for me, like I was talking to Joe Sapinora, who's the host of the Entheogen podcast, and he had a really interesting perspective on Burning Man itself as a psychedelic, as a place where we can manifest our mind, as a place where we can manifest our mind in a way that we can interface with it and grow and imagine new directions for our society, for our culture. And when I was looking at the man, I was kind of, I have my own interpretation of what the symbol of the man burning means. Some of this, I think, is maybe just projection. I remember saying to Alexa when we were walking up to the man and everyone was just crowded around it, waiting for it to burn. I just thought, like, how crazy human beings are, what we'll do around building up a little statue and knocking it down, and the amount of meaning we'll project onto that.
Well, the history of the Burning Man, though, goes way back to pagan times.
Yeah.
And but way before we knew about Burning Man, we used to come up here to the Center for Symbolic Studies, where they would have the midsummer festival, but it was really the end of summer festival. It's kind of like a harvest festival. I forget the pagan name of it really, but people would dance around the Burning Man. They would build a man out of bales of hay, basically, and this was a tradition that goes way back. And if you haven't seen the movie The Wicker Man,
Yeah, that's a great movie.
That's it's just about that sort of ritual that I think may be global, and I'm going to do a little research on it this week. I will do that for our workshop next week on Saturday from 3 to 6. We're going to be doing a workshop on Burning Man and festival culture. So I want to find out a little bit more about the history of the Burning Man, but it goes way back to the pagan. The Center for Symbolic Studies offers sort of the main pagan festivals and ceremonies, and we met a lot of our friends there. Brian James for one of them, and it's just been incredible. So, but anyway, yes, they burn the man, and it's the end of the summer. It's a harvest thing, and I find it to be like, look, the fall is like a new year. Even though we celebrate New Year's on January 1st, that has nothing to do, January 1st, with the celestial anything. Yeah. Or with the way we our habits through the seasons. See, the end of autumn is the end, the end of summer, the beginning of autumn is the beginning of a new year. And in Judaism, it is the new year. So that's coming up in the end of this month. And it's, it falls on the first new moon of the autumn. After the autumnal equinox, it's the first new moon after that, and so it's all according to the stars. So, but anyway, that's this is a new year, and I feel like when people go to Burning Man, they cry at the temple because they feel this separation from their past. They memorialize and they say it's over, it's gone, it's the end of an era. Yeah. But really the end of a year. And people go back to school and they, vacation's over and they get back to work and whatever. And they head towards, towards the winter, you know what I mean? So it is a new year of sorts, and it is a new year for religions that are based on the stars and the moons.
But why so much experimentation with new ways of doing things around what would be traditionally a harvest sacrifice, one of the things that I thought when kind of looking at the man, and I remember sitting at the bottom of it, kind of just appreciating this kind of circular terrarium of plastic insects at the base, and it was so ornate and so beautiful, and I just was in complete disbelief that they were just gonna burn this, and I got into a discussion with a guy who said, that's the point, build it, burn it, build it, burn it. And then I kind of had this realization that what I think the man represents is culture. I think that culture is symbolically represented as masculine as opposed to nature being symbolically represented as feminine. And I think that cultures, as they grow, they tend to lean towards tyranny, lean towards being very rigid and oppressive. And I think that it's important to occasionally update our culture, to burn down the things that don't serve us anymore and create new things that serve us in the direction that we want to be going in. So I think that burning the man is dispensing with the aspects of culture that no longer serve us and celebrating new visions of what we could bring into being. I think this is why so many people experiment with new realities, reality tunnels, to use a term from Robert Anton Wilson. We're experimenting with new values, new realities that we can inhabit, and I think that's why Burning Man attracts so many artists, because I think that one of the true roles of the artist is to envision new realities, envision new futures. Amanda Sage is doing that with her Vision Train, inviting artists to create their vision of their of what they want the year 2030 to look like, because it's the artists who kind of go out into the unknown and map it and bring it back in some kind of tangible form for other people to look at and to glean some insight from and potentially reorganize the way we organize ourselves, you know?
That's pretty much the definition of visionary art.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you go.
And that's why visionary art culture is so big at Burning Man.
Exactly. You go fishing in the, super consciousness, and then you bring it into form. And so a lot of the art that is on the playa engages realms of the human imagination that are not easily addressed in the art world that exists today. It's a different social structure that allows a temporary temple to be erected, that allows for a collective memorial to take place. These are authentic religious functions that are occurring within the context of a art performance, installation kind of, venue. We speak of it in that way. And I think that's the best way to hold it culturally at this point. But because of where we're at COSM, I can't help but see Burning Man as a kind of a symbol and truly one of the world's greatest symbols of the power of the renewing power of the creative spirit. It's a phoenix, for one thing, but as you say, this kind of phoenix that is hardened into, in this case, if we, addressing the man element of it. Amanda, to mention her again, she had heard that Larry Harvey had been to the Vinatoc celebration outside Gunnison in Colorado and seen a burning of an effigy before the Burning Man began on the beaches there in San Francisco, evidently the next year or something like that. But it's also the Wicker Man did come out around that time as well. But as a symbol of the taking down of the man,
the patriarchal,
burn the man, he's like, he's telling us what to do, damn it, and so that was what happened in Vinatoc. They had decided that there was some asshole who was, commanding everything and probably the wealthiest person around, and and they had the most power and everything like that, and so it could have been political, it could have been corporate, could have been, and they would go and they would build the effigy of the man on their lawn, and they would, have their gripe and grouse fest right there and burn the man and then go back to work.
Right.
They had spoken, they had their, their way to shake a fist and say, we're not happy and we're going to burn the man.
And you can totally feel that, like just thinking about, because the man burning on Saturday and then the temple burning on Sunday, those are two completely different experiences, where what you're saying just a minute ago with the man burning, it's like a bunch of fuses that are just like pew, pew, pew. Like everyone's just so excited, and the energy's at like a full climax. And at some points I was just like, I am in an arcade game right now, like looking at all these amazing art cards.
There's so much neon and there's so many lasers. There's so much light on the playa. I just want to tell you about the first time we ever went to Burning Man in 2003. We were with the Church of Wow. And in 2003, They had one laser on the playa. Our guy, Richard Wolf, the technician, he was a technological genius, really changed the way we watch movies, okay? Let me just tell you, the whole streaming of movies to movie theaters was because of Richard Wolf. But in any case, he brought the first laser to the playa. You know how many lasers are coming off of one art car now?
Yeah.
But that was only one green laser that came out at night from the Church of Wow. And if we were out in the middle of the playa looking at stuff, because they did have some lighting out there somehow, but they didn't have lasers. So we could see our laser. It was all the way, and you could find your way home.
Yeah.
And everybody else was sort of finding their way home in relation to that green laser.
Yeah.
It was the beginning of lasers on the playa.
Well, it seemed like the playa played a game with you in that sense, where at first we had this gigantic, big neon elephant as like a place marker to navigate through, and
everything's dropping like flies.
Then it got destroyed. We had that head which stayed pretty constant throughout the whole time, and then there was the folly, but then the man, and like all of our at first you could kind of treat these big sculptural elements in the playa like stars that you can navigate through in the same way we would look up at certain stars in the night sky to find. Yeah, this is something Johnny Harris was explaining to me. It's like the sculptures, the art is how you navigate through the terra incognita that is the playa. But soon they just kept dropping like flies. And the night of the burn, we had some serious trouble getting home because all of our guiding stars were destroyed.
But the temple wasn't.
The temple wasn't.
That is like
a
forest.
It's one of those ways that Burning Man will kind of throw you into chaos to see if you can swim through it.
Well, even within your own like grouping to find your trailer, you know, the people are always like there's a swimming that goes on and things start moving around. But we were very well located, so we could always find our way home.
We had some good markers for sure.
But they do tuck that foam home back into the living areas, the residential areas. They tuck it in. They don't want it to be right out there on the playa. So you got to go find it.
We had the big pink Merkaba on top of our tent.
That's right.
That was
they
our
give you
North
that.
Star.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Well, even just like riding, the bike riding, you felt like you were bike riding on the moon and just like following like our group. The bigger the group, the harder it was to keep up and just like stay in this chain link, you know, because everyone's got lights on their bike. Like, I wish, you know, that was the one thing, what you're saying about your friend Richard, just having like one laser. Like that kind of sounds lovely. You
Never
know? Like
again.
All these lasers are trying to compete with the stars, really. And it's like, that's the best light show, in my opinion.
It really is. But you can really see them out in the middle of the playa. You can really see a lot of stars.
There were parts when we were biking through the playa, like through kind of dense areas of art. But then we got to a spot where there was like just a big expanse of nothing. And our friend Torrance said it felt like we were in between galaxies, you know, or like we were kind of floating through space. And like some parts of the playa like felt tangibly colder than other parts too.
Dark matter.
Dark matter. We were going through it. And you know, it's also funny too, going into Burning Man, I thought that the fashion aspect of it, the radical self-expression, which is one of the principles, I thought that was kind of like a little vain. Like, I'm not one to dress up in flashy clothes or like put too much attention into being as extra as possible. But I realized at Burning Man that all of that fashion, it's functionality. You want to be as visible as possible during Burning Man, so you don't get lost.
Me with your art car.
Exactly.
I find my fashion, which is extremely different from everyone else's fashion, because it's so nothing. Nothing. You be nothing and you actually stand out. So if you wore black, I didn't wear black though, but I don't know. I think that it's glorious that people dress up. I don't think that it's wrong not to though.
Yeah, but I was surprised by the functionality of it all.
Like the fancy goggles. They were maybe bedazzled, but it also was.
They were goggles
to protect your
and like big scarves. Oh, they're actually dust masks that you pull over your mouth. Yeah, it's all like these kind of big boots. Oh, I get it. It's like there's dust everywhere. You're walking on a desert. I want to get back to this idea of the man burning. And I think that the man can also be represented not just by like certain people in our society, maybe the wealthiest ones in our society, but more abstractly, the man is the traditions, the conventions, the habits that we all kind of adopt in our culture. And we're programmed, and Burning Man invites us to question those things. Like, I think one of the things that Burning Man invites the discussion about is monogamy and polyamory and different ways of organizing sexual relationships, you know? There's a gigantic orgy dome at Burning Man, you know? Why would there be, I was kind of trying to look at that from like an anthropological perspective, like why are all these humans getting together in the middle of the desert and erecting this gigantic dome that's meant to have orgies in? You know,
well, because that's a segment of our society. There are people that are actually really attracted to that. They used to have a drive-by shooting range, and they used to have a genital.
Wow.
They used to have a genital portrait studio. Go have your genitals photographed.
All right.
And they used to have for many years, and Zena was talking about it, the Thunderdome.
I saw the Thunderdome.
Did
That
they
was
have the
amazing.
Thunderdome
Yes,
out
they had it
there?
this year.
They have
So
it
for
every
Mad
year.
Max, there's like this big geodesic dome that two people are hanging on these elastic ropes,
Yeah.
and they're jumping at each other.
And
at
they have
Burning
these
Man
big
with
Nerf
foam swords.
bats.
And
But they're
people-
very
yeah,
substantial Nerf
And people are
bats.
like, it's from a movie called Mad Max.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my
Yeah,
God!
yeah.
And they try to knock them off, and they're swinging.
I
They're
saw that
swinging
too.
around.
We rode past it the first
Yeah.
night.
It's really
Yeah.
amazing. So these are the different kinds of attractions that you have, and I'm sure there's a biker village. I'm sure that there is a. There's definitely. We went into a place on the playa that we had never been before, which was for the super high-end people. It
Yeah.
looked like a vast lobby. A cross between a vast lobby of the most magnificent hotel, contemporary hotel, and a and then some sort of futuristic movie, because the ground was simply the playa, and on that they had laid like sisal rugs and couches from some modern store, some contemporary store, and there were people there having highballs, and there was it was a club basically. And there was an entryway. It was like going into, like seriously high-end real estate. And I'm sure, and I didn't get to go see any major, star trailers, but that's what's back there. They come completely equipped with a bar, with a complete bar, and your satin sheets and whatever, and all stocked with the food that you've asked for, and you fly into the Playa Airport.
Right.
You get shuttled from there to your trailer, and that's where you start. And you can order whatever you want: the bicycle, the whatever they call it that travels along motor or whatever.
Do you think there's something lost with Experience Burning Man like
Well,
that?
I'm of a different variety than many, I know, in thinking that it's very important for these people to be there.
Yeah.
I feel like, okay,
Yeah.
because they would not be there if it weren't for that.
Yeah.
And I will let you talk in a second, but I just want to say I've been doing some research on the Rainbow Gathering, which is kind of like the other side of what it is. And they are also a more barter and gift economy. They do both barter and gift. And they've been going on since after Woodstock Festival. In 1970 was their first Rainbow Gathering. They collect in the national forests of the U.S. and camp, and it's free. And everybody brings, and everybody gives, and everybody takes care of each other. And you can go with nothing, and you can be taken care of. And there's always a piano. So it's thousands and thousands of people. They bring pianos into the middle of the woods, and they bring musical instruments, and they have an incredible free gathering. It happens every year, and
cool.
the peak, they say, is July 4th weekend. July 4th, actually, any time of the week. But in any case, there is an opposite there, and that is everything's free, but rich people don't go, okay? So you want to get people together in unity and harmony and make beautiful things. It's a different kind of approach. And you have then enormous projects, enormous projects, like we saw the temple and then Larry Harvey's temple, and then the Man Pavilion, and they create incredible structures there for people to get together,
Yeah.
to get together, and be free.
Well, the theme at Burning Man this year was metamorphosis.
Yeah.
And in the foam home, there was the foamogenesis kind of, transformation of a person to the best that they could be, basically. And I think that that's the quest that the artist always has, is that how can they make it better? And so every year, the Burning Man represents a wide variety of folks who have been funded by Burning Man itself for the for inclusion on the kind of the main map, and then also welcoming all the various artists. I think it's a remarkable kind of setting for creative people and invitation to creative people. And the reason that it's of interest to the wealthy and folks who would like to display their own and have their own social setting there is that there is sometimes an intermingling of audiences and intelligences that allow for what I will hope to be an opening to the transformation in society. One of the most hopeful discussions that we had was with I think a genius engineer, Matt Atwood, and his current projects of carbon mining. Now, the carbon mining from the atmosphere becoming a practical thing that makes mining for oil less attractive, and in fact less. If it will cost less than drilling, then we have a contender for the way that the oil and fossil fuel industry will move forward. And the most hopeful thing, because I thought, well, we're going to get those guys, those rascals who knew that they were killing the world in the 80s, like a tobacco kind of lawsuit that would, bite back and get them to fund the creation of these machines that would help to carbon mine the atmosphere.
I've never heard of that.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a fascinating thing,
Yeah.
and see, Matt has been developing this along with a number of other engineers. That how do we draw carbon directly from the atmosphere, because that's what's choking the world and what's driving up the temperature. And so he has developed this kind of brick kind of thing that the that carbon clings to, and is like basically sponges that rotate around a thing, absorbing this, then can be washed off, and you have pure carbon that then can be sold on the open market. And can be used in any of millions of ways.
Wow.
So this is a practical thing that is getting some funding now from a oil partner. I'm not sure which one, so I don't want to say. But this would be a positive step forward, just like Rick Doblin, who wants to integrate psychedelic medicines to mainstream society. Matt, without opposition, the oil companies are coming to him and are looking for future solutions. They don't want to be out of business because of climate change.
Right.
Who would?
It's going to make
They
it look
don't
good.
want to ruin the world, really, now that it's really coming to pass. Perhaps they really would like to invest in a future for all of humanities to succeed. That's what I think the big dream is.
And this is why I think it's so important for people like that to go to Burning Man, because sometimes they get some value from some of the amazing principles, because that's very much in alignment with leave no trace. You know, like we want to we don't want our existence on this planet to leave a negative trace on Mother Nature. You know,
Well,
that's why we need to update father culture.
There's so much of that thinking going on at Burning Man, the ecological thinking that's going on at Burning Man, and there is a factor of people who actually have the power and the means to make a difference. So you're putting together brilliant minds like Matt Atwood, who's been in charge of basically producing the camp. He produced our camp, Entheon Village, and he produced Maps's camp
Back
ever
in
since
2006.
then. And so now we're back with Matt Atwood. He's always been the producer of the camp itself. He's the provider of the compost toilets for the whole camp in many other
Thank
camps.
God for those.
And the Abraxas is his. So he
cool.
he is a huge provider for the camp, but he's always been in the field of energy.
Right.
He was one of the early biofuel people that, when he was really young, picking up all the oil from all the fast food places and turning it into biofuel, and they sold it. It was a business for a while. And then he went into algae, like trying to turn algae production into fuel. And he's evolved that, I believe, into the carbon mining. So by trying to take out from the water, he learned that it would be better to take it out of the air, that the water gets it from the air, and to take it from the air, the water would process its own. Basically, it would become less and less pH imbalanced.
He was saying, that the pH imbalance is one of the things that hurting the coral reefs and everything like that, and also the fish. And so, because where does most of the carbon fall? Into the water, because that's what mostly covers the earth. And this is, a concern I didn't even have. It's like, oh my God, you're polluting the oceans and everything. Oh, it's terrible. So he said, and so how do you sponge it out of the oceans? And he says, you can't. So he said, by removing it from the atmosphere, there is a homeostatic balance between the ocean and the air. And that as it's removed from the atmosphere, it will begin to leach out of the oceans.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this is the only course we can take.
Yeah.
I mean, to survive the planet? Okay, yes.
That there are people there that he's there to speak with,
Right.
and who
How
relate
important.
to each other in a social setting.
Yeah.
Business is social, so things are moving in that department, even though people say that it's so, hurts the carbon footprint for all 80,000 of us to go there.
You can't deny that.
Okay.
In the greater scheme, though, what kind of conversations are happening at Burning Man that might ignite solutions? Like sometimes, I mean, I thought it was funny when all those politicians flew on their private jets to like the climate action summit in Europe. It's like, and they got all this criticism of like they're using so much emissions to go to something to talk about how to cut emissions. But maybe there were conversations had at that place which will reinvent the way we transport ourselves.
Well, that's what you hope. That's
what you'd
always
hope.
what you hope.
Fingers crossed.
I think there are people at Burning Man, though, where they're really trying to help and really doing things. And there's lots of, incredibly important discussions going on, like all the talks that you were speaking about it.
Yeah, I had this kind of one idea at Burning Man. I thought that Burning Man is almost like a computer. It's like a computational mechanism that helps generate new ideas, new systems, new things that will be brought into the world. But I want to get back to Burning Man as a social sculpture, because in a similar yet different way, Cosm is a social sculpture as well.
Totally.
Cosm invites us to reinvent things, reinvent the way we look at religion, creativity, the mystical experience. What are some principles behind social sculpting that you are applying to Cosm.
Well, Cosm is a sculpture created by all the artisans and special working people that are here. Like, everyone here is creative. If you're in shipping, you're creative. If you're in the store, you're creative. So wherever you are here, to make the temple work and to invite more guests and to have a social system in which we get along and make something beautiful together. That's the whole idea. I mean, why build a temple? Why even build a temple? Why do they build it at Burning Man? They build it because everybody wants it. They want a place to find the others. The fact that we get so many thousands of people together around one temple is because it's going to burn. Well, the way we want to get everybody around this temple is because it's going to be preserved. We want to leave a trace. We want to leave a trace that in our generation, as Alex says, we built something other than parking lots and shopping malls. We that just still stand there and rot. We built a temple that represents our community and our core values, which are the values of acceptance and the values of love and peace and prosperity and upward spiraling and self-actualizing. Those are the principles that we really embrace, that everyone should be self-actualized and love their life. And we intend to create a beacon, because that's what a church can do. It can be a beacon, a lighthouse, where you can go and it's light. There's more light. We don't hide from the darkness. We know the darkness is there. We talk about it openly. But we also try to create a place of peace. That means that people who are not peaceful are not welcome.
Yeah.
And that's, enraging for people who love to shoot people with guns. It's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
It's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
But we only embrace those who can get along and be peaceful. And we have every right to kind of make that distinction because we are a church.
Yeah.
So
The temple at Burning Man was probably the most grounding element of the entire week, I felt. And everything kind of dominoed effect, I personally feel, out from the temple. And I feel like we do that a lot with Cosm. Like, yes, we're building this temple that will, house the collection of your work and the visionary art movement. But then we also have like the permaculture initiative that's happening around it, and we have this education center that we're building with workshops. And so, yes, this temple is something that we want to sustain and is a very grounding element, in my opinion, for people to have a mystical experience and reflect with themselves. And then there's just like all this action that's also happening around it that envisions a regenerative future and encourages the creative spirit. And
it's a container.
It's exciting.
It's a container. We have a 40-acre container full of woods and structures and finished interior spaces where things can happen, and wonderful open exterior spaces where things can happen. We have the incredible advantage of being able to have open fire because we're a church. Yeah. And we try to fill that container with as much variety, diversity, creativity, acceptance, interest.
The church status allows you to have open fires.
Yes.
I wonder why. Why is that?
Because it's part of our religion.
Yeah.
Bonfires in a retreat setting and things like that are allowed for the scouts and for religious organizations. And so it's not something we do every night, but only for the special festivities. I think that we've always been interested in, having these elemental celebrations and cosmically aligned with the full moon and with the solstices and equinoxes and things like that, because this is the sturdy cosmic alignment that the great religious traditions have always pointed to. And they each have their own different mythology, but many of them follow the same calendrical kind of sequence. And so one of the kind of tenets of cosm really is that we think that creativity itself, that art is a religion, and that it's probably the oldest functioning religion on earth, because the only reason that we know human beings existed so long ago is because they left some art behind. And we think of them as almost these caves as being the temples of yesteryear, or perhaps the light shows of yesteryear. And that its responsible anthropologists are positing that early Cro-Magnons were tripping on mushrooms, going into these dark places, and with their flames and whatever, or just watching the light play on these surfaces, because some are not that deep inside of the caves. Some are very deep, but some are not so deep. And so with the easy hallucination of seeing shapes that appear to be like the cows whose dung, out of whose dung you were simply munching on mushrooms moments before, you know, you have a sacred cowish kind of a relationship with these creatures. You might want to put them all over. You might want to make them a special feature of your cave art.
Yeah.
Which they were.
Yeah.
And you also see the early kind of visionary art, which is the human-animal hybrid, the shaman of Troy Frere, the sorcerer of Troy Frere. Exactly. These kinds of visionary beings appeared in the earliest of cave art. So visionary art, let alone, like, I guess in Africa, in Tassili, Algeria, 10,000 years ago, where they had mushroom-headed beings carrying mushrooms. Now, that's older than all the world religions, but there it is. Any kind of, hippie could say, oh, that looks like a totally, magic mushroom, little guy running around, with more magic mushrooms. And now we're talking old-time religion. This is where people got in contact with their divine imagination, and they would meet these characters and things, and those are the contacts with this realm of visionary imagination that comes into visionary art. And so we feel an affinity not only with the Vienna School of Visionary Art, but that an affinity with the most ancient, and then through all of the sacred traditions, which all had temple building and sacred art as part of their tradition, or we would not know of them. Each of the religions have a story. They have a mythogem. Each one of them is a beautiful expression of the divine. Each is a cultural lens or portal into that sacred realm. And so by acknowledging their interconnectedness, our ultimate vision for Entheon is to put a face of God that goes continuously around the building, making it one Godhead, seeing in all directions, and incorporating as many religious points of view and perspectives as possible.
Now, a symbol.
Love it.
Back to fire, Alex. Fire is a symbol and reoccurring motif in so much of your art. Can you talk a little bit about the significance of fire as a symbol, as it relates to kind of the subject?
Well, fire, I believe, is also symbolically associated with light. The torch, the candle, all of these things are illuminating. So first of all, symbolically, it relates to illumination. And illumination alludes to consciousness or awareness. And so we use the symbol of the triangle as the most simplified version and symbol of fire.
I didn't know
The
that.
rising flame is like the triangle. And so that is also a symbol of the triangle, is the fire.
But the
And so
triangle
the-
means spirit, which means it's pointing upward rather than pointing downward. It's the spirit. But it's also grounded. So it's about our spirit as well, because we are earthbound creatures with this upward pointing look or upward looking self.
Yeah.
And then that's why you have spires on the top of churches and stuff. It's the groundedness of being an earthbound person, but the upward looking of the pointing up.
Love that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, Keith Critchlow, our friend and teacher of sacred geometry, spoke of the triangle in relationship to two other shapes. First was the circle, because that's the one-sided sacred geometric shape and the perfect expression of basically spirit. So that is the realm of spirit. And then the other shape was the square. Now the square, he said, that is the material world. Everything is hard and solid and structural, and that's what our association is with the material world.
It's a block.
Exactly. So now you've got spirit and you've got matter. Now, what brings them together? Mind. Mind is symbolized by the triangle, this uprising shape, which also you can look at architecture all over the world and see the interplay of these three shapes: the square, the circle, and the triangle. And so what do we have with the Gothic arch? With the Gothic arch, we have the square, which of the material world, the downward pointing, the doorway, basically, or that. And then it rises up like an arch. An arch would bring the heavens to earth, but then insert the triangle inside of that, slightly giving it a point so that you feel the triangle, and you've got the mind pressing on heaven symbolically.
I think you have the circle in there too, because it inspires. It's an inspiring arch.
And you know, it's something I thought when we were watching the temple burn. I was really meditating kind of on the symbolism behind fire, because with my symbolic mind, I saw all of those prayers and those souls and all those shrines made to the people who others have lost this past year. It's almost like the fire transmuted that energy into spirit, into smoke, into something that transcends material world. And the dust devils, that was amazing. Off the temple, when it burned, these little like dust tornadoes kind of spun off like these souls almost passionately moving on,
dancing
Dancing away from the temple.
and taking those prayers into the highest heavens, because they just those pillars of dust and embers.
Where they touched the ground, it was red with heat. It was like it reddened the ground like hot coals, and it moved away from the temple, and just repeatedly up as far, and they went so far. I've never seen that, and frankly, after that, I looked up other temple burns, and you do see dust devils, but they're mostly in place. They don't this traveled so far. I was afraid it was going to go towards somebody. It's amazing.
I wonder if it was like the engineering of the temple itself, because it had that full sort of
And the flatness.
the flatness and like the alleyway of the temple.
It has a
itself.
lot to do also with the weather conditions of the evening. Sometimes it's so still, the air. But
I thought it was pretty still.
The air was not completely still.
I don't know. It
And
seemed pretty still.
there was the right evidently coordination of elements to create these massive.
But the tallest structures went first. That was another thing that seemed a little bit metaphorical to me in my condition. It was just that, where it was sort of stepped, the tallest went first. And the smallest went last.
Yep.
The lowest to the ground took longest to burn.
Yeah.
It was just, I don't know. Does
Yeah.
it mean anything?
Yeah.
You're there and making everything significant. It was the hottest fire I probably ever experienced.
How far away were we? And we
We
still
were
felt
a
the
We
heat.
had a
Really
great spot, by
far.
the way.
We were
Really
like
far.
probably a quarter of a mile away.
if
I
not
would, I
more.
would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the firefighters that lit it were like itty bitty little peas.
Yeah.
And I took my jacket off. Felt like we were like right at the bonfire that we have here,
Yeah, it's
and
very hot.
jeez, I'm sweating.
Yeah.
It's
Cool.
it's very sad. They built that thing out of wood slats.
Yeah.
And we've seen other structures at Burning Man made with sort of they just make enormous
2x4s,
with the
yeah.
same thing over and over again. And these were amazing. These were not even 2x4s. They were slat
Yeah.
wood.
Another experience I had regarding kind of the symbolism behind fire is when we were on the Abraxas Dragon having that Tool listening party. In the distance was the temple, and there was a burn happening behind the temple, but it made the temple look like it was on fire.
It did, it
without
glowed.
being destroyed. And that's something that I've seen in your work, someone or a figure in flames, but not being destroyed by
fire.
those flames, like holy fire, exactly.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just a very powerful presence while we were having that incredibly powerful moment, playing that Tool
It's
album.
like the burning bush.
Yeah, the
you
burning
know,
bush,
which is
exactly.
and the temple was not burning, and yet it appeared to be on
Yes.
fire.
Yeah.
And so, well, fire is obviously pointed to by a lot of the different sacred traditions. We see some beautiful pictures of a kind of veiled Muhammad surrounded in flames that are really quite extraordinary. And there are some Persian miniatures with quite extraordinary pictures of the Barak taking Muhammad to the seventh heaven and going through flames that here seem to symbolize both a purification through different levels of a golden light, but they're also like illumination because they're gilded and things. And so a lot of the subtle body anatomy has been symbolized in fire, like Kundalini itself, the serpent fire, the serpent power, can be seen as this kind of illuminating force that dwells inside of us. So you can see how the coincidence of illumination or light, fire, and consciousness or awareness have confused into something that can be seen as a transformative symbol. And it's really the reason that I used it in the Tool symbol that I put on the Lateralis CD that became emblazoned like a tattoo on thousands of people as a Fire and I. Fire and I is it's a symbol of consciousness and in some ways of higher awareness and passionate view, because I think that art gives us a perspective or a view. It's the easiest way to alter your consciousness, is by looking at somebody's, unconscious, subconscious, superconscious, whatever they are, it's been blooped onto a surface, and that's art. It is essentially the raw, naked worldview of that person, that artist.
Yeah, I certainly feel lit with inspiration after being at Burning Man with both of you, and obviously you and the COSM community. It was.
Any intentions come up for you around Burning Man, like stuff you want to accomplish?
I mean, I feel like my work with COSM is only beginning. That's for sure. I really
I know,
do.
we're
and
growing, Alexa.
I feel like just it reaffirmed what can be manifested when people work together, whether it's, you know, cooking up meals for a camp in the kitchen or helping to decorate a space or just making people feel welcome. Like, all of those components are super important, and I feel blessed to have been witness to that on a massive scale, and I look forward to seeing how we can integrate that with what we're doing here at COSM. I think we're already doing a pretty great job, but yeah, I feel super stoked about that. And it was just such an honor to be at Burning Man for the first time with all of you, and
Every
I
time
can
you
second
go,
that.
it's different, and this was
Yeah.
very unique for us. Let me just say.
It was a good time. It was fun.
Yeah.
We laughed a lot.
It was so much more fun for me this year, in many ways, say than many other years,
Surrounded by so many people who loved us.
because we had the friendship of our crew and friends and things like that, and so it was really wonderful to be with you guys, and to also have this little kind of philosophical
Debrief.
decompression.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing it.
Integration session.
That's right.
Yeah, so I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Tyler.
Allison
Thank
Gray
you
and
so
Alex
much,
Gray and
Alexa.
Alexis Spaddy.
Thank you so much, Alex.
I love you.
And I just wanted to say, you guys are going to be talking about this more on Saturday.
Yes.
What date is that? September.
The 16th?
Next Saturday.
This Saturday from 3 to 6,
Yep.
we're going to talk for a couple of hours with you about Burning Man and festival culture. And we're going to bring up, you know, a lot of these points, but also show lots and lots of pictures of our travels and of other festivals. We're going to have images of festivals on every continent.
Nice.
And there are
Love that.
festivals, and they celebrate, you know, art and music and dance and performance and film and moving image and laser art and, you know, every kind of thing. So we're going to highlight a little bit of that and talk about why do we celebrate like this and what are the different.
Can't wait to learn more.
Well, thank you so much, and
Thank you,
we hope to
Tyler.
see you all there.
Thank you so much.
Really
Let's leave
good.
it there.
Fantastic.
All right.
Thanks so
for
much,
you.
Tyler.
Lifted.
Thank you,
The
Alexa.
iceberg has been lifted.
Iceberg
All right.
lifted, okay.
Thanks for watching. Bye, everybody.